If you don't consciously embrace your shadow, you will unconsciously act it out. So a journaling process is what allows us to see the shadow and take the keys back instead of letting it drive the car. Wow, look at that. How about that intro, huh? I even wrote that one down. Oh, human psychology is weird. You're supposed to captivate the audience right at the beginning. Anyway, that's unusual for me. I just like to shoot from the hip, so let's get back to my normal. A lot of people have been asking me about my journaling process because I had referenced it in a couple of videos, and I'm hesitant to share because it's always changing and it's just what I use currently, but it's not ironclad. It doesn't mean you have to use it or do exactly what I do or that it's going to be the thing for you. But enough people have asked that I will share. Awakening is weird. At first, it seems like there's nothing to do. You're totally peaceful. Everything has changed. You have a true perceptual shift and you don't view yourself as yourself anymore. But then something happens. If you're being honest, stuff still comes up. You still have trigger points. There's still repressed things. But once you clear the majority of the wild, chaotic self and find a stable spot, less comes up, but the things that do come up are more subtle and deeper. So this is where a lot of spiritual people will ignore and just pretend like everything's okay and they're a spiritual teacher and nothing affects them. I'm not one of those. I had a real perceptual shift. I live in a completely different way now, and it's fantastic. Also, hurts a lot sometimes because stuff comes up, and I look at it and I feel it now instead of ignoring it. Even after an awakening, it doesn't fix your life. It doesn't end well, it kind of does end suffering, but it doesn't end uncomfortable, painful life situations. So occasionally something comes up, and the healthiest thing, in my opinion, to do is look at it, dig into it. From a place of non-attachment, shadow work becomes a lot easier because you realize that shadow work is something that you're navigating through, but it's not actually you. Like a firefighter entering a burning building. He has protective gear, he's ready, he's prepared, he's going into the smoke and the fire. But he never makes the mistake of thinking that he is the smoke and the fire. It's just part of the job. So when it comes to shadow work, it's just part of the job. It doesn't mean it defines you. It doesn't mean it is you. It just means this is what's showing up today, so this is what we're looking at. So to carry on, my process is a mixture of 3 or 4 things. I like to give credit where it's due. My basic groundwork for my shadow work journaling process comes from a video that popped up in my feed years ago. And I got to be honest, I don't watch this guy or follow him, but I think he has really good advice on certain aspects of the spiritual journey. His name is Abky. You probably heard of him. He's kind of famous on YouTube. And he has, I think even has a book out now called The 3 Beliefs of Ego. His main premise is there are 3 main emotions, sadness, anger, and fear. And the 3 beliefs attached to the emotions are, for sadness, it's lack. For anger, it's attachment. And for fear, it is control. So if you have, say, an emotional outburst or you get angry, you look at, okay, well, behind anger is an attachment. So you list the situation, you list the emotions you felt, and then the belief or the attachment, you try to kind of figure out what is the attachment underneath this. What am I attached to? What do I want? What am I believing about the situation that caused anger? And then you ask his 2 questions are, what is the experience asking me to accept? And what is it asking me to be aware of? Now, I don't follow that directly, but I kind of use it as I'm journaling. The second thing that I kind of morphed into this process for myself is from Byron. She has a book called Loving What Is. That showed up in my life about 5 or 6 years ago. I read through it. It messed me up in a really good way. I was shocked and amazed, and just, she's so about direct experience. Can you prove that what you are thinking or believing is true? is it true? Is her question. She has these workbooks. She's got online resources for free, I believe, byronkatie.org or something like that. And yeah, at the end of all of the questions, she has a lot of questions to kind of round things back to yourself. So that's where I got the idea for turning something around. So if I say, this person made me angry, I turn that around, and it's actually, I made me angry. So then you can look at, how did that happen? How did I make myself angry? And before you ask if it's true, you really dig down and just try to find where it came from. Because all these beliefs or trigger points come from somewhere. To keep going with the firefighter analogy, triggers can be like a fire alarm going off in your body. But instead of the alarm detecting actual smoke, it's detecting a memory. So there's no real danger. But if you don't like the way that you're acting out, or you're uncomfortable with being triggered, there are ways to dig down into the memory, knowing that it's safe, and finding out where it came from. And then, as a lot of people like to do, just take the battery out of the fire alarm, because that stuff's annoying. So, real example, because I don't care about, looking good on here. My job is to be honest. I got angry at my 5-year-old yesterday. Now, a couple things happen. When I get angry at a 5-year-old, I am immediately aware that I did not choose that. It was an instant reaction. So that's what I'd call a trigger. It wasn't an active choice. It was an immediate reaction. And then I was also very aware that she's 5. I'm the adult. So the problem here is not her. It is me. Now, what she said and my immediate reaction, I kept that. I stored that in my memory, and I decided I'm gonna look into that later. In the meantime, I had to apologize and explain to her that I'm not perfect and that I am sorry for raising my voice and all that good stuff. That's, just it's humbling and embarrassing at the same time, but it's just part of this process. Nobody's perfect. Stuff still comes up. Even after you have an experience or see the truth or truly have a shift in identity, things still come up. You don't float above everything. Sometimes you still have to walk through hard stuff, and that's okay. Don't beat yourself up or guilt yourself or say I should have or I shouldn't have. No, just look into what happened and face it directly. It's uncomfortable, but it will free you. To carry on with that example, so I took my journal to my favorite coffee shop this morning, and I did what I always do. I wrote it all down. She said this. I responded in anger. Why? Well, I just went through this process. Anger. Behind anger is an attachment. What's the attachment? I want to be the better parent. I want her to like me more than her mom. All this other gross stuff that's just, who cares if it sounds good or bad? It's true. It's what's in there. So I'm looking at it. And I have all these beliefs that I want to be the good, the fun parent. And then it really boiled down to, I want to be a good parent. But then I have to ask myself where that came from. Now, before I ask if it's true or try to dismantle it or get rid of it or transcend it, don't worry about that. That's at the very end. You got to really see where it came from. Well, where did I get the idea that I'm not a good parent? Because that's why what she said triggered me. Because there was belief. She said, you're the worst or something like that. Yeah, I think she yelled at me, you're the worst. And the only reason that made me upset in the moment is because I believe that could be true. That I could be a bad parent, that I really could be the worst. So I have to look at that idea, where it came from. It obviously came from my parents because I didn't think they did very good. And then growing up, I'm trying to overcorrect that. If you don't want to be like your parents and you try to be better than them, then you have this striving, this energy going towards becoming something. And that something is what we're looking at here. That something, is it true? Is it real? So is it true that I am not a good parent? And is it true that I am a good parent? Are either of those true? And my answer is inevitably no, because can I find the concept of good parent in my direct experience? I cannot. It's not there. So this is where all the intellectualizing about this stuff and noticing things aren't true, that's not going to help. The only reason for this is to lead you into the feeling, that feeling of maybe I'm not a good parent. That's uncomfortable. But saying it and writing it down is not what frees it from your system. Feeling it. I journal to get to the feeling. Because you know how people say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, an emotion is worth 1,000,000. Emotions carry so much more information than concepts and things that we do with our mind. The emotion, when it's felt, will bring up and rewire everything that needs to be brought up and rewired. So I feel into it. In public, tears falling. I don't care anymore. I do this stuff all the time. Nobody's paying attention to you in public. Nobody cares. They're all worrying about themselves. So there I am at a coffee shop, sipping on some coffee, journaling, tears coming from my face, feeling unworthy and like I'm not a good parent. Just feeling into that feeling. And then when it is felt, when it is let in, all the truth just floods in right afterwards. So the truth is, it isn't building a new identity. It's not dropping I'm not a good parent and adding I am a good parent. Neither one of those are true. So I just felt into the negative because that's what I was feeling. Now, if I was prideful and feeling like I was a good parent, I would have to feel into that pride and also drop that identity because it's the same, just on the other side of the spectrum. At the end of all of this process, I completely dropped, let go of, and felt through the idea that I'm not a good parent. And let me tell you, every time you do something like this, it's freeing, it's beautiful. It's wildly uncomfortable in the middle of it, but right afterwards, you can barely tell anything has shifted, but you carry on doing these little things. And you will tell. You will be able to tell in a month, a year, 2 years. You look back and you won't even recognize the person that started doing this. For me, it is to feel and understand, accept, love the whole process of being human, and then to look into parts that are ugly or are triggering or are just programs that have been put there by my past memories, my parents, my childhood, all that stuff. And it's not to change yourself or to get better. In my case, it always ends up that I drop more of the self, that I have less and less things to grab onto, to have an identity in. Now, when you have an ego death, a lot of this stuff goes, like a huge amount of your identity just disappears or it completely shifts into nothing. But then after a while, things will come up that are more subtle and deeper because you were able to look at them without losing your shit. Previous, you're too chaotic and wild inside and you can't handle it. So it's just the grace of universal consciousness or God, whatever you want to call it, that you aren't shown these deeper things before you can handle them. You have to maintain a stability in here first to then be able to dive deep, realizing that it's not personal, to then get rid of some of the stuff that you've been given that you believe is personal. Hope that made sense. And then part of my journaling process too is wildly intuitive. So there is that structure from Aaron Abky's 3 Beliefs of Ego, and that ending structure of is this true, and turning the question around from Byron Katie. But then in the middle of that process, sometimes I'll stop and read, or I'll listen to music, or I'll get up and move my body, or I'll ask ChatGPT some deep questions and see if I can get anything from that. And I'll extend my feelings, my thoughts, my movements until I feel like I really got it, or I feel like I'm really getting somewhere. And for each person, that's going to be completely different. That is my current process of kind of discovering what is true. And you always turn it around. There is nothing true outside. So if you are one that wants to blame someone or blame the system or anything external, you have to turn that around and see where that's coming from, because it's coming from you. It's not coming from someone else. So if you don't even have the ability to look inside, then all of this, what I just said, is going to be pointless. You'll just keep blaming and blame shifting and projecting. So when that stuff gets settled, when this external complaint finally slowly turns around and goes internal, it's extremely brutal and uncomfortable, but that's where the healing and the change and the shifting begins. That's what meditations are really good for, because you start to notice your own thoughts and feelings, and that they are all coming from within you. Nothing external is causing you to feel the way you feel. Also not easy to hear, but it's just true. So I guess I'll end by saying shadow work's not about fixing yourself. It's about seeing that you were never broken to begin with. So every time you uncover and look into and feel through a shadow, it is just one more layer of the self being seen through, being cleared up. It's slowly removing, piece by piece, the stories that we tell ourselves and that we believe are true about ourselves. The beauty is what remains after we do this, and it's a quieter mind, a softer heart, a real presence. We start to see the self that we've defended for so long and argued with for so long as just a thin veil that's actually just covering who we truly are. And we slowly return to, or start to realize, what's always been here. It's a more vast, more open, spacious, honest, beautiful version of life and existence that we can live in all the time. So as our old story loosens its grip, we just take more steps into feeling lighter and more free. We live in the story less and feel that unknown, loving, guiding, present moment awareness more and more. And not always because the shadow disappears. You can say it disappears, or it's integrated, or now you're aware of it, or the light and the shadow are now friends, not enemies. The duality inside yourself, the parts of you that you're scared to look at, have now been looked at and become part of you. So you slowly become one instead of two. That holy, higher version of you and that lower animal version of you become one version. And as that happens, you can step out of the entire thing and just watch as a third-party observer and realize that none of it is you. But when you are split, that's very hard to do. So oftentimes integration and seeing clearly come first. And as always, thanks for watching.